This is the three things with your host, Gene Church. Before we get started, I want to remind you that I intend to create a three-part special report on the progressive movement and why it is leading to the downfall of America. Our program is normally Monday through Thursday, but I'll be doing a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday program addressing the progressive movement this upcoming weekend. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube page, I'd ask that you go to our website, the3things.net, and subscribe to our YouTube page. Today's episode, the corruption of the Biden family. How many of you saw the interview last night with Tucker Carlson with Tony Bobulinski? If you haven't, look on YouTube and find the interview. If you watched MSNBC, CNN, or any of the major networks, you would know little about it. Bobulinski appeared to be highly credible and was a remarkable witness to the corruption of Joe Biden. A poll taken prior to the interview by the Washington Examiner YouGov poll found that 45% of the respondents believed that Hunter Biden had engaged in some form of corruption, while 32% said that they believe he has not. This includes 91% of the Republicans and 45% of the independents. Just 27% of the independents said that Hunter Biden had not engaged in corrupt business practices. Only 11% of the Democrats agree, however. A large majority of the Democrats, 57%, said Hunter Biden has not been involved in corrupt business dealings. Voters are split on how important Hunter Biden's business dealings are to their vote, with 39% saying it was not at all important and 32% saying that it is very important. This leads to a breakdown on partisan lines. Among Republicans, 68% say that corruption allegations against Hunter Biden are important to their vote, while 67% of Democrats say they're not important at all. Independents are split, with 36% saying the corruption charges are not at all important to their vote, and 30% saying they consider it to be very important. So despite the attempt by members of the media to keep the public from being aware of what's going on, the public has been actively reaching out. And last night's Tucker Carlson show was the highest rated show in cable television. Apparently, people who do not watch Fox News jumped in to see the Tony Bobulinski interview. Tony Bobulinski, the former Hunter Biden business partner, said last night that he was warned against going public with information about their business dealings when another ex-partner told him, quote, "You're just going to bury all of us," end quote. He even had an audio tape of his partner's conversation. During an appearance on Fox News, Tony Bobulinski said he spoke with former partner Rob Walker to demand that Walker get U.S. Representative Adam Schiff of California to retract his claim that the Post's recent reporting on Hunter Biden's emails was part of a Russian-orchestrated, quote, smear on Joe Biden, unquote. Tucker Carlson then played a snippet of an audio recording that Bobulinski said was part of the phone conversation. Quote, "If he doesn't come out on record, I'm providing the facts," unquote, Bobulinski said. "Aw, Tony, you're just going to bury us, man," Walker responded. Bobulinski, a former U.S. Navy lieutenant, said he was outraged by Schiff's October 16th comments on CNN, where Schiff attacked a series of reports by the Post about Hunter Biden's emails. Quote, "We know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin," unquote, Schiff claimed. Bobulinski said he knew the emails were authentic because he'd received one dated May 13, 2017, that outlined a plan to have 10% of their company, Oneida Holdings, quote, "held for by H for the big guy," end quote. To have a congressman out there speaking about Russian disinformation to say that and associate that with my name is absolutely disgusting to me, Bobulinski said. Bobulinski had previously confirmed that the H in the email, which involved a pending deal with China's largest private energy company, stood for Hunter Biden and that his dad was, quote, "the big guy," unquote. Bobulinski said Tuesday night that, quote, "a single phone call from Joe Biden could have gotten Schiff to retract his remark, and that he hoped that the Bidens would do the right thing," unquote. But while Walker, a former official of both the Bill Clinton and George W. Bush administrations, promised to, quote, "make some calls," he sort of presented it as if that's going to be impossible, end quote, Bobulinski said. Bobulinski also said that Joe Biden's brother, Jim Biden, ultimately wound up with a 20% stake in Oneida Holdings after the 2017 email a few days earlier that said he'd only get 10%. What I'd ask the American people to read and look at is, how did Jim Biden go from a 10% owner to a 20% owner, he said. I'll leave that to the American people to answer that. The planned joint venture between Oneida Holdings and a company tied to CEFC China Energy was never funded by CEFC, nor did it complete any deals. The Wall Street Journal reported this last week, citing people familiar with the matter. Neither Walker, the Biden campaign, Hunter Biden's lawyer, nor Jim Biden returned emails concerning comments about this issue. Bobulinski has evidence that Joe Biden met with him on 2 occasions, including one night meeting in a bar to discuss the business transactions that were going on. So Biden's claims about knowing nothing about Hunter's business dealings were false. And Bobulinski claimed that Biden's actions compromised the Bidens from a security perspective. Late this evening, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee verified the authenticity of the documents that were presented to them by Tony Bobulinski. And corruption in this matter runs deep. For Tucker Carlson to prepare for his interview with Tony Bobulinski yesterday, Fox News' LA office had received documentation from another source which provided damning information about Hunter Biden and for which Tucker Carlson hoped to have by last night. It was overnighted from their LA office. The package en route was opened by someone while in the possession of a nationwide carrier. They reviewed camera footage, interviewed staff. They know it happened at 3:44 in the morning that it was discovered that it was open and missing, but they have been unable to determine how this happened and who took the documents that were involved here. This is about as un-American as it comes. And if this doesn't disturb you, I don't know what will. If the Democratic Party was not as corrupt as it has become, Joe Biden's primary opponents would have cared about his family's documented habits of trading their own powerful last name, almost certainly with Joe Biden's knowledge. People can disagree over the scale of the corruption, whether it reflects only Hunter and James, or if it includes Joe Biden as well. But it is unequivocal that the influence peddling has been a steady pursuit for the Bidens. Even as the corporate media downplays recent revelations about Hunter, the New York Times reported new documents from Tony Bobulinski that, quote, show that the countries that Hunter Biden, James Biden, and their associates plan to target for deals overlapped with nations where Joe Biden had previously been involved as vice president, end quote. The records make clear that Hunter Biden saw the family name as a valuable asset, angrily citing his family's brand as a reason he is valuable to the proposed venture, the New York Times noted. That name trading seemed to have been explicit in some cases, and even Ben Smith and the New York Times tweeted on this on Tuesday. Here's part of the NBC News report from last October. Quote, as he accompanied his father to China, Hunter Biden was forming a Chinese private equity fund that associates said at the time was planning to raise big money, including from China. Hunter Biden had acknowledged meetings with Jonathan Lee, a Chinese banker and partner of the fund during the trip, although his spokesman says that it was a social visit. The Chinese business license that brought the new fund into existence was issued by Shanghai authorities 10 days after the trip, with Hunter Biden a member of the board, end quote. Hunter Biden took Air Force Two with his father to meet with a Chinese banker who also happened to be his business partner, and 10 days later, their fund's license was approved. But we're supposed to believe that it was a social visit, and we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden had no clue his son was meeting with business partners on their trip to China. Crucially, we know Joe Biden lied about his knowledge of Hunter's overseas business. There's some evidence he received financial benefits from it. Joe's lie alone is reason for suspicion. We are aware from what Bobulinski provided us already that $10 million was loaned to the company on the good name of the Biden family. So we do know that millions of dollars were involved. What we don't know at this time is how they were cycled through the Biden family. While certainly learning more about all of this, the Bidens used their name in these countries, and it was known by Democrats in the media while his father was running the primary. Strangely enough, however, Biden's opponents pretty much ignored the entire story about what was going on. This is incredible, given that just showing Biden's knowledge of the dealings would have been damning to a campaign that was weak from the beginning. Now, it's also incredible that Biden was running against a group of staunch, supposedly anti-establishment progressives who complained about the influence of money in politics. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was caught selling access to his father's administration, raking in hefty sums based on his perceived ability to influence policies for a fee. Beyond being a powerful campaign attack, the issue raised serious questions about Joe Biden's commitment to ethical conduct. But nobody wanted to touch it. The negligence was so glaring that even Ezra Klein wrote a story in October of last year headlined, quote, "Sorry, but Democrats need to talk about Hunter Biden," unquote. Democrats are afraid to talk about Hunter Biden. Trump won't be, said the subheading. In a piece, Klein argued, quote, "Biden's vulnerability here needs to be tested in the primary when the Democrats have other choices, rather than in the general when they won't," end quote. The New York Times described the Democratic field as, quote, "tiptoeing around Hunter Biden," unquote, listing the general rebukes and firm disinterest Joe's opponents mustered. So why the silence? Writing in CNBC last December, Jake Novak contended, "It is not a mystery why the Democrats who supposedly want to defeat Joe Biden for the nomination are so quiet about all of this. They clearly don't want to be seen as advancing President Trump's efforts to get Ukraine to investigate the Hunter Biden deal." I think that's correct. With the possibility that Biden would win the primary, the other candidates were also probably terrified of being cannibalized for damaging him beyond viability in the general election. The result, however, is the second cycle in a row in which the Democratic Party failed to use the primary process to vet its perceived frontrunner, which means it's also the second cycle in a row in which Democrats have nominated an entrenched career politician, weighed down by the baggage of corruption. This is exactly what happened in 2016 when Senator Bernie Sanders refused to really take off the gloves against Clinton, leaving the party ill-equipped for the general election. We know that Joe Biden lied to the American people. He met with people working with Hunter Biden, and he met twice with Tony Bobulinski outlining the extent of the Biden corruption and their organization of the scam so that Joe Biden could have, quote, "plausible deniability," unquote, as said by his brother. The Biden name and influence were for sale, and the Chinese were buying. Joe Biden is compromised by the Chinese, the Russians, the Kazakhs, and the Ukrainians. Perhaps that is why Biden claims that China really isn't a problem to America, because China isn't really a problem for the Bidens. As Joe Klein predicted last year, Biden's baggage hampers Democrats' ability to knock the president over questions about his business, too. As a self-styled enemy of the political establishment, Sanders alone should have torched Clinton and Biden over these issues. It's bad politics, sure, but it's also an incredible disservice to the voters. And this time, it's not merely the fault of the Democratic establishment. Of course, finding a clean politician in a field of people vying for the presidency is looking like a needle in a haystack. There's still no excuse to leave the issue off the table. Senator Ted Cruz, in reviewing the Biden scandal, has stated, "I don't think it'll move a single voter." It may be similar to discussions about Trump's tax returns. On the right, voters' cost-benefit analysis is that any allegations of corruption against Trump are secondary to his policies and attitudes. On the left, honest voters admit allegations of corruption against Biden are secondary to his ability to oust Trump. In a way, it's fitting that Biden is running to, quote, "build back better," unquote, channeling nostalgia for the bipartisan glad-handling and smoke-filled backrooms of the good old days of corrupt politics. If the Democrats truly hate the alleged corruption that they've spent 4 years yelling about, you'd think they'd want to show a little more interest in showing the money straight to Hunter, following it there. But the corporate media and social media are in the tank for Joe Biden, along with many institutions of the deep state. So the real question is whether the American people are in the tank for Joe Biden's corruption as well, or whether they silently and steadfastly are prepared to continue with 4 more years of Donald Trump. For the three things, I'm Gene